Hey folks, welcome to the Wrench Turners podcast, the show that's about improving the life, well-being, and productivity of mechanics everywhere. I'm your host, Mr. Joshua Taylor, founder and CEO of WrenchTurners.online. On today's show, we've got Loren Mejia, Diagnostic Technician at MBI Motors. In today's episode of the Wrench Turners podcast, we talk about BMW owners not using their signal. I might be guilty of that. Swallowing the hard nuts. And printing the book. Let's get into it. We can give them a little bit of love and so on. But Loren, what is it that brought you into automotive? What is it? Why did you get into automotive?
Well, I was definitely one of those teenagers that, couldn't wait to drive. And even before I could drive, had RC cars, both electric and nitro, and everything was about, muscle cars and hot rods and motorcycles. So I was fortunate to have a high school that still had automotive. So I kind of knew, I knew as a teenager, maybe with not some of the wisdom that I have now, that's what I wanted to do. So I pursued it pretty heavily.
Okay. And so you got to do some shop in school, and was it your shop teacher that kind of fostered it enough to keep you getting into it professionally?
Yeah. So, my automotive shop teacher in high school, he was a former technician at some in the local dealers, and his main experience was in BMWs. So he noticed that, I definitely understood what was going on. And he definitely also noticed, even at a young age, I took the trade seriously and strongly encouraged me to pursue a career in the dealer side, specifically German makes. He pushed that pretty heavily. Specifically, what he told me is it doesn't matter what day it is or what month it is, BMW owners have money.
I'm not entirely convinced that that's true, because I don't really have any money, and I had a BMW for a period of time, and I blew it up, and I decided not to fix it. I decided to sell it because it was too bloody expensive to fix.
Yeah.
It was.
After 20 years, there's definitely some salt that needs to be added to that one. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
now, I realized very early on in BMW ownership, though, how the lack of using a signal can get to you. It's like, I realize I'm not using a signal. I gotta use a signal. I'm using this bloody thing. I did. But maybe it's the you think you're driving luxury and you think I don't know. Yeah. It's a straight 6 with a 5-speed and a rear wheel drive. It was a whole lot of fun to get out on the road and down the road.
Yeah. So so basically, because he had already had some ties with the local businesses, I was able to, right from high school, to start a job shadow with it was then Rasmussen BMW in Portland, and was able to start a job shadow with them while I was still in high school. And I did not do like a UTI or a WyoTech. I went through a community college program that required you to have a dealership that sponsored you, and you went to school for 6 months, and then you were at the job for 6 months, and then you did that for 2 years. So
okay.
I graduated from that program in 2005. And since then, my entire career has been European makes, mainly Germans. I guess you could say I had a midlife career crisis and tried Jaguar and Land Rover for about 7 months and was like, nope.
The English is not for me. It's interesting because I think we get we were talking about this in the Service Drive live chat, and my wife and I were actually test driving this past weekend, and we're a long way out, right? We try to be planners in this household, so we're talking about test driving in May for a December purchase, or whatever the case may be. Maybe we have to order. I don't know, but we're talking about it in the chat, and I'm not brand loyal in that regard. It's function first, then form, then the payment. And in that order. If it doesn't at least make the function, I'm not even going to look at how good it looks. It's got to make the function. But so when it comes to brand, though, as a mechanic, I find that as I do more coaching, as I talk to more mechanics, I'm starting to talk to lots and lots and lots and lots. We get brand loyal as mechanics more about what we fix and not nearly as much about what we would own. Right. It's interesting because, I've talked to folks like yourself that it's German only. Audi, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes. That's about what you'll work on. And even then you probably want to stick with the BMW, right? You want to stick with the one brand and that's it. And anything divergent from that is like sacrilege. Yeah. It's almost like sacrilege, and those those that work on the JLR products are about the same way with the JLR products, who have been working on a long time, and those on domestic and so on and so forth. It's interesting how that works as we get into this industry more and more. So you spent 7 months at a JLR store and said nope, and then and where'd you head after the JLR store?
So I'm at an independent now, and we focus on Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Smart, and Mini. Mini is only British in title. It's all BMW technology, BMW networks. So it's basically all of your Mini products run on the current 3 Series platforms. So it's all very familiar when you're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, to get to that last point, though, working on something different doesn't intimidate me. What actually drove me away from that dealership was it was more of the internal workings of that franchise and how it related to the manufacturer, the technical support for JLR. It left you something wanting coming from BMW. Like at BMW, I could just log on to my normal server, do diagnostic on a car. At that time, it was, if you're 2 hours into a diagnostic and you don't have a fix, we were supposed to do what was called a Puma case, which is basically a ticket to the field service engineer to help you guide you through the diagnostic. And so they provided a lot of tools to help the technicians get the job done right. At JLR, there was an attempt at a lot of that, but it was I guess you could say the implementation and the way it worked was not as smooth. And it was oftentimes you'd have a vehicle in your stall, and depending on what generation you're diagnosing, their website, which was topics, that would be like logging into your manufacturer's resource training website. If it was a Tata Moda era's JLR, all the information was there. But if it was a older Jag, let's say you actually had a legit Jaguar when it was an independent company and you're working on it and you load that VIN number into their website, it just says VIN not found. So there was a lot of gaps.
We've had those challenges. We've been talking a little bit about that on Technical Masteries and support in the back end. And I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of technical support people, and I think we recorded with a Nissan technical support master here not that long ago that'll go out later on the summer. But the technical support folks, even forget about the software you're talking about. Like that is a major issue for every technician out there. Anytime that there's any difficulty with the software that gets you access, that's primary access to your diagnostic codes and your diagnostic information, your primary access, VIN not found when you plug in is a great way to ruin a day.
Yeah, 100%.
I need to smoke. That screen is I need to smoke, I need a coffee, and I need to breathe for a minute.
Yeah.
That's now I've experienced that at Dodge. I miss the days back when plugging in the OBD2 port and plugging in with a DRB3 and everything. It was basically like a 1990s telephone on steroids, the way it looked and felt in your hand. But it unless somebody had completely destroyed the cable, it always worked.
Yep.
It always worked. It plugged in, got your codes. You could do all of your rudimentary basic testing with it. 1995 give or take to 2008 was a breeze with a DRB3. I miss that simplicity of diagnosis.
Yeah.
And now they've got the Y-Tech, and I remember working with that, and as it was coming into play back in '08 and forward. But I'm thankful that I'm in a position now where, I'm at an independent motorcycle store, independent power sports store. So, you know, we have limited diagnostic capability, because the even the aftermarket stuff, the Snap-on tool that we have to be able to do any brand, has very, very limited diagnostic capability.
Yeah.
So it's almost pure proprietary that these folks unfortunately have to go back to. So from a luxury standpoint, I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Hey, if we plug in and we can't get anything, unfortunately, now we don't charge those folks. We've got our ownership is pretty good in that regard. It's like, hey, if we're gonna try and plug it in, we're gonna try and scan it. If we can scan it, we're gonna scan it. We're gonna diagnose it. If we scan it, if we try and scan it and we can't do anything, then we're not gonna charge you for the scan, and you're gonna have to go to the dealer. So that's customer service on that side, but not VIN not found. That's tough.
And like I was saying,
tough.
so depending on what era the vehicle came from, so if it was a Jag Jag or if you had a Ford Jag, it was hit or miss. So it was a lot of effort to put into a job. I mean, we all know, if you've been turning wrenches, there's a lot that goes through your head every day. And for this, in my opinion, for the franchise and the manufacturer to not have all their ducks in a row to make the process as smooth as you can make it, I just wasn't going to put up with it at that point in my career. So I went back to what I knew.
And I think, there's a lot of folks out there, we're getting stories here, there, and everywhere, having difficulties at Ford. I know the GM guys are absolutely livid right now. There's all kinds of connectivity issues, and I understand that there's some products out there that are almost not listed when they go to select, and it's not an option. And when they are, it's stuff that drives you right up the wall. It's the stuff that makes you have anxiety and stress, and it's like, why?
Right.
Like, you're billions of dollars on research and development, and on platforms that's supposed to be sync across, so that makes our lives easier, so that we're not trying to get you for 5 hours of diagnostic time under warranty, but we're trying to get these folks in and out. Right. We don't need to spend 5 hours to do an update on a piece of equipment so that we can do a 5-second scan. Like, come on, folks. So it's a challenge. I'm sure at the OEM level, I'm hoping that I can get in touch with some of these folks at the much higher level and have conversations to understand, what goes into this process.
Right.
Technicians out here are like yourself. I can't imagine being at a JLR store. You're at a Jag store. Jag, Land Rover. Come on. Jag and Land Rover. These are not inexpensive vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
These folks, typically, not all the time, but typically folks with a slightly larger pocket, with a slightly larger wall in it, don't necessarily care as much about money. Of course they do, but they don't care as much about money as they do time.
Right.
So,
correct.
If it's a scan and if it's a 5-second scan, so to speak, and a quick repair that can be done, but it takes 12 hours because the scan tool doesn't work, that's a hard nut to swallow.
And even at the independent I work at now, we run into those issues because so we're fortunate in that our shop owner invests in. We have an OEM Mercedes-Benz Entry scan tool. We also run all of the OEM BMW ISTA diagnostic software. And so we pay subscriptions to the manufacturer to be able to use these, but we encounter some of the same issues. All of your updates as far as your hardware is through their cloud server. So if they're having issues on their end, you could have, a couple months ago, we had it where the cloud server that does all of the aftermarket logins to BMW's resource website, it was just completely down across the world for 3 days.
Oh.
And they'll send out an email, but their tech support for the aftermarket, I guess you could say, diagnostic platform, because they have to offer it to the public in the United States. It's in the tech support's in Poland, so you'll put in a request for a ticket, and I
I
mean,
didn't realize it was in Poland.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness! So that's what, like, that's 14 hours ahead if I know
right,
the time shift about right. So 14
right,
hours ahead of, and that's a 14 hours ahead of me in the on Eastern Standard. So that means there's 17 hours ahead of those unlucky folks in California.
yeah. So, and not to mention, that part of the world is not without drama right now. I mean, even though there's not a war in Poland, they're very much, supporting people like coming in from Ukraine and other things. So getting a response quickly is sometimes difficult. And then, my shop foreman, I see him all the time, just like you're saying. He just has to walk out of the building sometimes when he's trying to get software updates into the
He's,
Mercedes entry.
he's probably like me right now. His hair is leaving him
Yeah.
faster than you could
Oh, yeah.
possibly imagine.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how all these manufacturers go about, when accessing their information. But, I mean, like I said, though, it's for my end of the spectrum, though, being a technician at a independent that services German makes, it is pretty awesome to have the factory scan tools, because we're looking at all
Well,
the same.
and they're not inexpensive. Like,
No, it's
to know
huge
that
investment.
your leader is doing everything he can to be able to provide the tools and resources that you need, that's going to best give you your best foot forward on whatever comes in the door. Mind you, it's not whatever comes in the door, because
Yeah,
you are only servicing a couple of makes. But it's nice to know that focus, and this is where, I've talked about this in the past, and I try to talk to this as many technicians as I can. Focus is really important, especially in a
right.
business. You've got an independent store now. Independent stores tend, not all of them, but tend to focus on domestic, or they focus on European, or they focus on Japanese, and so forth. But even that is a fairly broad spectrum, right? If you work on BMW and Audi, they're two completely different platforms. You have two completely different brands. Yes, they're both German, and yes, they have the same styles of stuff, but nuts and bolts aren't necessarily the same. How they put things together aren't necessarily the same. You need it's completely different sets of special tools. It gets very expensive for independents to be able to do that and offer that kind of service, especially when it comes to diagnostic equipment. You've got the factory. Zentry is not an inexpensive piece of kit.
No,
That Zentry is not inexpensive.
no. And they
And
only let you keep it for 3 years, and then you have to update the lease.
correct.
Yeah.
I heard about that the other way around while I was working at Mercedes, and understanding how some of the independents were able to get Zentries, and it was they weren't giving away like lollipops. Like, anyway, I digress. But when you get into some of that heavy diagnostics, now my big step, talking about Zentry and talking about Mercedes-Benz, going from Dodge to Mercedes-Benz, and to know what our diagnostic procedures were, and how scan tools and diagnostic procedures and the trees, as it were, and how we went about things submitting to Dodge, and then going to Mercedes-Benz, and those same processes, how completely different they were, and how much more advanced and detailed those things were.
Right. 100%.
I recall when you pulled up a scan tool on a Dodge, it told you the code, and then you have to go into the freeze frame to try to get more information. When you pull codes on a Mercedes-Benz on a Zentry, it's a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
It prints a book. Literal book. And it does that every time you run a scan. And when you're working on the latest and greatest for Mercedes, now you wouldn't necessarily get bleeding edge at your independent store. While I was at Mercedes-Benz, because the store I was at was literally at the base of head office of Canada. So all of the brand new SLR, SLS, Maybach, the Black Series, all that stuff, when it came in, the engineers would be down on the shop floor going, trying to figure out what's going on with it. And, you know, both shop foreman would be going at it, and the tech who happened to be completely certified in whatever product that was would be on it, and they'd be, you know, scratching their heads and pulling their hair out and what's left of it. And you notice very quickly that those folks don't have a whole lot of hair, or they're very gray. And the meme comes into play where the gentleman with the most amount of gray on his head and on his chin, you know, look at that mechanic, you know, yeah, he's 25. comes out, right? So, anyway, yeah, books, diagnostics. So we understand that you've been around a minute, and you've been working on Germans almost your entire career. And you're loving what you're doing now, working for a very focused, independent shop focused on German equipment, on BMW and Mercedes. What is it in your journey that has kept you in it?
You know, that is something that, you know, every technician has to find for themselves. And for me, it came to the point where the enthusiasm for the automobile and just liking cars or having car projects, it's not enough. Like, there's so much more to it when this is, you know, it's your occupation. It's no longer a hobby. There's so many other layers of processes and hoops and accountability that just liking cars and being enthusiastic about them, in my belief, it was, and for me personally, it wasn't enough. I had to be enthusiastic and an advocate for wanting to be the best with my skill set, to wanting to really be the master of my craft, which at a store like mine, it's diagnostic. It's not necessarily, you know, I can do these breaks in, you know, 30 minutes. It's not, you know, I can do the flushes all simultaneously at the same time. Our shop is, our main competitors are the dealers. So when we get customers coming to us and they've been to every Mercedes-Benz dealer in the Portland metro area, they're already hot. You know what I mean? They're looking for that final straw to help them fix their problem. And the way we win people over is every single one of our shop owner holds us to that standard, where I employ the people who want to practice this trade as best as you can.
At
And
the highest level.
I want our guys to be able to fix the car that even the dealer kicked out because they were just tired of it. So, you know, and so for myself, that's what I try to do. So I try to keep up on, you know, through the materials that are provided for us, keep up on service bulletins, keep up on, you know, when new software packets are coming in. Because even though I may not be doing warranty work anymore, you know, down the road, we'll still see that car. And if I have that reference material when the customer's coming in with a problem, that we have the ability to get it right for them. I just had a situation on it was a 2015 GLK 250 diesel. And when the customer would come to you'd come to a stop, and about 4 or 5 seconds later, you hear a click and a slight nudge from the rear of the vehicle. And there was an LI for this issue with the 250 diesel. And basically what had happened it was a two-part repair. You're supposed to do a software update. And then if the software update didn't fix the vehicle, then it was remove the front drive shaft, stuff it full of moly grease, go out and drive it, heat cycle it, do all these things to make sure that the splines in the front of the drive shaft weren't clicking anymore. And, you know, the dealer...
Okay, I'm laughing. I'm sorry. I gotta cut you off for a second. I am laughing because that is a repair that I had to do to Pacificas back in the day. You go back 20 odd years when Pacificas, give or take 20 years, go back when Pacificas were a thing. Now, this is Benz because the Pacifica is basically an R class.
Yeah.
Right? It's basically an R class. So it was the fix is you put the nickel grease on the splines of the drive shaft and it went away. All it literally taking up that tenth, right? It's basically the 10th, or cushioning the noise enough that it didn't make a noise.
Right.
I think one of the other, I don't know for sure whether it was the gap or whether it was the cushioning to prevent the noise, but like this has been around for a hot minute, but to think that was a technical bulletin, and what year of GLK was it? You're talking about what year?
It was 2015.
The 2015. So like
Yeah.
it's pretty close to still technically being, maybe it was infiltrated by Dodge. Maybe
Yeah.
Dodge infiltrated still.
So it was funny though, because this customer ended up at our shop, and he was educated enough where he was like, look, I've already had this software update. He had a downloaded copy of the LI from a forum, and was like, the dealer didn't want to pull the drive shaft and lube it, so I want you guys to do it. So
That's easy money.
Oh, dude, it was 6.5 hour job. And pulled that front drive shaft out, lubed it up, put it all back together, and sure enough, it's gone. So it's good to be able to have all that information. One, I was able to verify, like, because we all know, being a technicians, when a customer provides a bulletin, I'm actually going to go and make sure that VIN is actually applied to it before I just do something based off a forum. So sure enough, we looked it up, and it was applicable to his chassis. And so, we went through there and did the whole job. And like I said, it fixed it. And, we had a happy customer that's like, well, I'm not going to go to such and such Mercedes anymore because I didn't even want to do what I asked. So, because to be fair, in our area, when you talk about the mechanic shortage or the technician shortage, the Pacific Northwest is being hit hard, like hard. I mean, we've had tool truck owners go out of business because there's no new bodies to sell tools to. I mean, it's an industry in our area that is not promoted as a viable job. It doesn't fit, I guess you could say, the narrative of the social culture as something to encourage people to do. So the shortage is real. And so
and I've been preaching this from I've been preaching this from the hilltops for ages, but I've been actively, outwardly, publicly preaching it's not a technician shortage, it's an apprentice shortage. We don't have our bottom of the bucket. We don't have that bucket being filled with new young folks who want to come into this trade and make a difference and be challenged by the industry that's in front of them, make a good living, provide for themselves and for their families. Because for the last 30 years, everybody's been telling everybody to go to the bloody universities, go to college, go to universities. The trades is not for you. And even when they are talking about going to the trades, they aren't talking about coming into ours. They're talking about go be a plumber, go be an electrician, go now welders is a really, really, really big thing. For some reason, I've got more welding stuff coming across my TikTok feed, across my Facebook feed, across my Instagram feed, welding. And these folks, and God love them, because they got more patience than I do, because I don't think I could sling a stick that for that long, for that many hours, and that's why it's paying so well. But you can be a welder, and you can be a welder pretty quick, and you can make a really good wage really, really quick with little to no experience, little to no tools, because if you get into a shop, you don't have to provide just about anything. It's your face mask, your gloves, and you get to work. Now, there's all kinds of trades out there. There's all kinds of trades, and you talk about our own in automotive, you split it apart. You've got automotive, you've got power sports, you got marine, you got heavy truck coach, you've got diesel specifically, you've got all like ag, like you break it down, it's all of it all on wheels. So there's not a whole lot coming in, and it's troubling because we make the world go around. So we gotta do what we can to try and fill that bucket again. Now that brings us to the next question. You've been in it for a while, and you've been at European most of your career. Now that you've been around for a hot minute, what are the two things here? One, what would you do if you had a magic wand right now that you could say would dramatically help? What would you do to help leaders out there get new people in? And two, what's your piece of advice for technicians to help them be happy tomorrow, so that those folks that you help get in?
So on that first part, one of the things that there's a lot of accountability in what we do, from the write up to me performing my task and to that vehicle being delivered. And one of the things, I know a lot of people don't like to hear it, but a lot of times that accountability is always preached to you as the employee. And I think at this point, especially in some of these areas where there's some drastic shortage in people being interested in this trade, it's time for some of these big corporations to take some accountability of their contributions or lack thereof to attract more people. And I'm not saying that, I don't want to shame anyone or any specific company, but it's just, especially here in the United States, you know, it's a make or break business. Like here in Oregon, when you're flat rate, you either make money or you don't. There's no safety net. Like there's no tool wage, there's no nothing. So if there's no cars, you're just not getting paid. And if you're, I mean, and there's only so much you can do to keep yourself motivated and to keep yourself in that positive mind space with when every day you're showing up to work, especially in the wintertime, and you may be getting 2 hours. And you're standing there being like, you're asking me to perform at a level, and I'm trying to do that for you every day. At a certain point, there's got to be some accountability somewhere of why is the work not here? Why is the work not getting sold? What can we do to work together to make this process better? But unfortunately, if you're just the technician, there's not a lot of voice that you have at a dealership to help make any change. So that's one of the things that I've encountered a lot at a lot of the dealerships is when you're a technician, especially if you're motivated to want to do your job correctly, to be a good employee. Unfortunately, just because of that corporate structure, your voice is lost, and you just don't matter enough to unfortunately make a lot of those changes. Now that viewpoint is changing.
Let me jump in here for a second. So let me play a little bit of devil's advocate. Okay, so being able to talk from both sides of the bench, being able to sit behind. I've sat in the big chair, I've sat in the really big chair, I've been in the drive, and I've been behind the bench. There's a couple things at play that I see from my perspective. I agree with you that especially in the really large, now getting to like super mega large corporations out there, that I think they're trying, but
yeah.
I think they're
I wouldn't say that they're not trying now.
I think they're trying, but I think from my perspective, they're too far away from the ground. Right. I think they're trying 100%. To operate at 30,000 feet, and they need 100%. To be at the 1 foot level.
100%.
Right. I think if they had some folks who are at the ground level, genuinely not there for the greed, because I know folks who are at the ground level get this opportunity to I'm gonna get to talk. I get to talk to the CEO. I get to affect some change. How much can I get paid for this? Is a very common thing that I hear. Not everybody, but it's a very common thing, and then it discourages upper level management, executive management. It discourages them from getting ground level information. But if they were able to get tactical ground level information and really pick the brains of the people, I wouldn't even necessarily say the folks those of us who are in the shop floor right now or on the shop floor right now. It's what do the teachers of the high schools and the colleges think? I know that Jay at Wrenchway is trying everything he possibly can to, in his advisory board meetings, his committee meetings, to try and get in front of teachers and institutions that are affecting the minds of the young people that potentially can come into our trade.
Right.
That's the kind of level, that's the kind of intel that they need at the corporate level to understand, okay, what do we need to do to make those people want to come into our trade? Right? It's not the likelihood that you're going to convert a 40-year-old. Like if I'm going to be 40 in the fall. The likelihood that if I was in a desk job or in a minimum to mid-wage job now, the likelihood that you're going to convert me into a mechanic now is slim to none.
Yeah. 100%.
Slim to none. Right. So, and secondly, as a technician currently working, the carrot that has to be dangled to get me to go from one shop to another has to be exorbitant, absolutely exorbitant. And the challenge is, in reality, is if you dangle that big a carrot in front of me, I'm going to be skeptical that it's actually real.
Right.
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 The opposite can also be true. Devil's advocate here. I can try and take the carrot, and I can try and take the carrot all away from him. I talk about it on a regular basis. We got to hold ourselves as mechanics and the rest of our community accountable, because there's mechanics out there that I've now heard stories that are trying to take those large signing bonuses and not show up.
Oh
Like
yeah.
this is,
Yeah.
I preach about how important it is for mechanics to find a high value leader. Like that's the
Right.
number one rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
But these high value leaders, they're getting ghosted on interviews, right? They've got thousands of dollars being spent on job ads to try and get people into their place of business. They're offering sign on bonuses and moving costs and moving expenses. And there are people out there trying to take advantage of these good people,
Yeah.
right? Both sides of that coin need to be held accountable.
Oh
Like
yeah. 100%.
corporations need to be held accountable. Yes, I 100% agree. And they need ground level. But we as a community, we as a mechanic community need to hold our community to a high standard if we want and expect the bar to be raised for us,
Right.
right? We need to be
I wouldn't
just
disagree
as
with.
professional.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. And the the Portland area, it's a small market for, German makes. There's 3 Mercedes dealers, 2 BMW dealers, two Audi dealers. So in specifically the community of technicians that I'm in, you know, there are some of those people where they've worked at all the places and now none of those places want to employ those people. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is unfortunate. And, that's why I was saying earlier, like, that's what motivates me. I try to be the best that I can be with my skill set, but that also with it, when you're the master of a trade, your reputation also goes a long way. So if the
Mm-hmm.
accountability and the integrity aren't there, those are 2 missing pieces to your skill set, because, you know, our market is small enough that that word of mouth is very big still. I have customers that call our shop. They don't, we try to tell them all the time, hey, schedule your appointment like every normal customer, but they just want to talk. They'll just ask for the technician right away because they've been coming to the shop for so long. We've, had to have that face to face time with them just to help give that little more explanation of what's going on with your car. This is why we're doing it. This is what we're looking for. And what you get in response though to that is these people really do trust you when they see that, this is what I'm getting for the dollars that I'm spending to, try to fix this problem. These people are 100% focused on trying to fix this problem for me. And it's often a different experience from going to one of the larger dealers because, um, they're right now, if you want to have a diagnostic work, you're 1 to 2 months out. And so,
What?
yeah, recalls sometimes 3 to 4. So
Holy lightning.
yeah, and not to
I haven't
mention
I haven't heard of weights like that in a while.
yeah.
Well,
So
that's hearing talking, every Sunday getting the opportunity to listen to folks like Joe Chambers and Sean Butler and Daryl Terrell talk about what their goal is for their service departments. Now I don't I know Joe has an Audi store under his purview, but I know he would absolutely cringe to think of a 4 month appointment wait time.
yeah,
And I know
sometimes
MFT would be absolutely cringing that there's an appointment wait time anyway, because he likes
yeah,
the free for all attitude of no appointments. Yes, appointments can happen, but no appointment necessary. Come in for service. But to think 3 to 4 months out, my
yeah,
goodness, these people need their vehicles. They need to
yeah,
feel safe in their vehicles. That's
yeah,
not great for the brand as an OE.
yeah. A lot of that has to do, unfortunately, supply chain issues are a real thing still. So especially when you're getting into some of the recall repairs, sometimes there's just no parts. And even in our side and the aftermarket side, especially after COVID, Mercedes-Benz is phasing out a lot of parts because they're going full head steam with EV development. I mean, we had a 2008 GL 450 in the shop, needed fuel pumps, no longer available as an OEM part. So
But those are Bosch pumps, are they not?
yeah, but to
Okay,
call your
so Bosch
Mercedes,
Bosch will produce them for
yeah,
ages and ages because Bosch knows how to make money. But
yeah. You call Mercedes and you ask for that fuel pump, they're going to tell you NLA.
No longer available.
No longer available.
No longer
And I
available.
mean, we
But
go through a lot of parts. I mean, with our local Mercedes dealer, we're 40 to 55 grand a month in OE parts. So we get it a lot, especially the early 2000s vehicles, your 211s, your 203s, even some 204s, a lot of stuff they're just nope, no longer available. It just they
like 204s was a big market share vehicle. 203s,
yeah.
204s were big market vehicles, and let's hold on, pause for a second. For those illustrious who've not worked for a Benz and don't immediately speak in acronyms, can you tell the good folks what a 203, a 204, a 211, a 212 is?
So most of your German manufacturers, they refer to their vehicles by the engineering platform. So what did 211 run from, like 2006 to 2011? So that would be your E-Class Mercedes-Benz sedan of that generation. 204 would be your C-Class, and then what was the other one? The 212 would have been a S-Class. So those are the
Mm-hmm.
engineering designations for the platforms. And BMW was very similar. Like depending on the generation, you can have an E46 3 Series, an E90 3 Series. Their acronyms have gone crazy now with the expansion in models, where they have FG cars and all the way for every model now. It's crazy. When I first
They
started,
went from, what did it go from It went from E90 to F5 or something like that.
yeah. So
It's like they're
E90
calling
was
out
replaced.
bingo numbers.
Yeah, oh, I know, it's great. So E90 was replaced by F30, and now uh, the current BMW 3 Series platform is what they call a G platform now, and I can't remember the numbers behind it, but it's their G platform, and like I said, so with
They
the
they
expand.
they have to have done that just to piss off the Mercedes owners,
Oh
because
God,
now you've got G wagon, and now actually a G chassis is a BMW. It's a 3 Series BMW.
yeah,
What is
yeah,
going on? Anyway,
I know.
I digress. So
Uh,
cool. This is about as it gets interesting to the degree, like watching some of the stuff that comes across your social media feeds, and you find out really interesting things, like something like BMW helped create the R32 Skyline, and how that was somehow evolved because of the way they shared design at some stage, because they shared a manufacturing plant of some description somehow back in the day.
mhm.
I gotta do my due diligence on some of this stuff, because it's pretty bloody crazy to think.
Yeah,
But even still, if it's true, that's really cool. And why the
yeah,
R32 that's why they call it Godzilla, because it's bloody amazing, and I love it, and I love
yeah.
it, and I want one. But
Well, and that's also
uh,
too, like, right now your current Toyota Supra is based off of a BMW platform and drivetrain.
yep.
So they collaborated with them on a lot of things too. And then it was funny because when I was at the JLR dealer, all the guys there, they hated it when one of them would come in with with the BMW V8. Because BMW owned Land Rover from like 2002 to 2004, and they put the M62 TU in a lot of the bigger Rover models. And all the guys there hated that car. I was just like, give them to me, give them to
It's not
me.
that, like I said at the beginning, it's sacrilege, right? It's
Yeah,
sacrilege.
yeah, they
All
hated that
right.
engine, and I was just like, just line them up, just line them up. I'll put water pumps on them all day.
And that's okay. So this is where we're having some good laughs here. So this is where a great point. So what is your piece of advice? This is kind of inferred. This is what you need to feel like being a mechanic every day, right? This is
Hmm.
one of my own personal pieces of advice, as we've talked about before. But what is your piece of advice to help technicians be happy?
This is something that it was something that I had to learn and you have to develop, but and that's kind of one of the reasons, like I told you at the beginning of this, I don't own a computer, so I prioritize being disconnected after getting in the shop. So, because I have a Zentry going, I have a laptop going, I have a desktop going. Sometimes I have a AutoLogic going, and I'm answering emails from you know tech tickets that I send to LMV, tech tickets to AutoLogic. So it's like when I come home, it's time to decompress. And the way I do that,
Interesting.
it's it's
Ah.
it's kind of like a ritual. It's like I try to minimize. I guess you could say, the screen time to, help keep that anxiety under control, you know, kind of get out of those ruminating thoughts of, did I tighten that bolt? Did I do this? Did I do that? I mean, you really have to learn how to relax and to, when you come home from the shop, to leave the shop there. And that's something that I think a lot of technicians struggle with, because you're always thinking about, when I get back to work, I got to be back to work
Mm-hmm.
in 8 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to get back right back on this problem.
I'm
You know what I
bad for
mean?
that. I'm really bad for
And
that. Now, I will
so,
say, personally though, I will say, like right now, I left work on Friday, and I started like I like to have whatever I'm working on my hoist for the next day, the night before. I'm one of
mhm,
those guys. I like having that, even if it's just there and I've done nothing to it. Now on Friday, I was way ahead of the curve. I was like 45 full minutes ahead of the curve. So I had this beautiful, beautiful 2017 Ducati 797 on my hoist. And
mhm,
I started working on it because I called a whole bunch of work on it back in the fall, and it's come in for its spring service, and we're gonna do all the work on it. I think we're gonna do some fork seals on it. It's got a whole lot of miles on it, but it's pristine,
mhm,
absolutely pristine. White tank, red lattice, red wheels. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And we're doing a
yeah,
whole bunch of repair work. I'm probably gonna work on this thing for probably 2 or 3 days with the
yeah,
sheer volume of work that I'm going to be doing on it, because it's got a lot of miles on it, but it's
yeah,
pristine. So I'm thinking
yeah,
about it, knowing that tomorrow morning I get to work on it. But tomorrow morning I get to work on a beautiful bike that I enjoy working on.
right,
And that I don't mind, because it's not anxious thoughts, but
right,
I like the idea of the decompression, decompressing,
yeah,
deconnect. And for you're literally uh, disconnecting. You're doing everything you possibly can to disconnect from tech as much as you can. So when you're there and you're present, right?
right, right. That's part of it. It's just practicing that presence of mind of whatever you're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
to, because you need to break those cycles. Your mind needs a break. Like, your body gets tired, so does your mind. And I don't, you're probably no stranger to a lot of the statistics that stress, anxiety, suicide, things like that. They are things that affect our industry and technicians more than a lot of other trades, because it's just it's
It's
something
a
that all
very
of us.
scary thought. It's a
Yeah,
very scary thought, because it affects us a lot. We are the top
yeah,
one. We, as mechanics, we are in the top 3 professions that unalive themselves. That
yep,
has been an ongoing statistic. I'm waiting for the 2022 statistics to come out so that I can hopefully I can say that we're no longer in the top three. Hopefully that's come down. But since the
hmm,
2016 statistics and the 2020 statistics that came out, I may have to wait till next year. But those
yeah,
two both kept us in the top three. I can go to the document that from 2020, and I can count the number of folks, because it literally says in the statistics there's 311 in 2020. That literally means that 311 folks, 311
hmm,
of our brothers or sisters, mostly unfortunately brothers, unalive themselves in 2020.
hmm,
Um, in the statistics, that's awful. It's
right,
absolutely awful, and it's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. We need to spread the
yeah,
positive energy. We need to, negative pushes, positive pulls. It's
yeah,
important. It's important to check on your brothers and sisters in the shop, because sometimes you don't get to see them, and every day that it concerns me, every day that I walk in the shop and my bay mate's not there.
hmm,
It just, you never know. You
right,
absolutely never know. So check on your buddies,
yep,
your bay
100%,
mates.
yeah.
Just, hey,
And
how you doing?
that and that was one of the things that, I started noticing your posts on LinkedIn, and you were addressing those things. A lot of I mean, not that it's wrong, but a lot of your corporate recruiters and some of the other organizations that are encouraging young people to get into this industry, unfortunately, we have to look at all aspects. You got to shine the light in the dark spaces. And I saw you make some posts about a lot of those things, and I'm like, this is a guy who gets it, because it's not an easy job, and he's unfortunately, you got to shine a light in those dark spaces to make people aware, but also too to how to make this trade healthier in the way we perform it. You know what I mean? And
100%.
that's why I mean, I use a meditation app, help me go to sleep at night, just kind of like I said, you quiet that mind, and then the next day you actually, even if I only get 6 hours of sleep, that 6 hours of sleep is better than 9 hours of sleep laying awake being anxious.
100%. Sleep is so vitally important, and I appreciate that kick there. I really appreciate that. We have got to shine the spotlight as bright as we possibly can in the places that we don't want to look.
Right.
And it's ruminating, 20 odd years ago, 20 plus years ago, to my first experience with suicide in this industry. I didn't understand how much it impacted me then. It hurt me then. I didn't realize how much it impacted me over time. I didn't realize how much it would impact me today, just thinking about it, and how much it makes me hurt inside that someone that was close to me did that. And it's not that I'm being selfish in the fact that it hurt me. It's hurt me because what could I have done? And I have to remember that it's not my fault. But what I can take upon my shoulders is, as every day, if I can say I'm doing what I can do, I'm doing the best that I can do to make sure that I provide for myself, my family, and my community. And if we all do that every single day, that I am providing the best I possibly can to myself, my family, and my community includes my baymates, my team, the business I work for, give my best every day. Say hey to the people you haven't said hey to in a while.
Yeah.
Talk to the people that, maybe they tell you to fuck off every time you say hello. But guess what? Those tend to be the people that on like the 15th or 30th or 50th time you said hello, maybe they start talking to you. Yeah. Maybe that was the day that they bought the rope. And 20 odd years ago, he hung himself. And I have to, and I think about that because that is the kind of thought process. Like, if you can prevent the action that leads to the action with a hello, hey, I care about you. Hey, I appreciate you. Hey, thank you for helping me. Those are the things that cost nothing and can be everything to someone.
Right.
And it's those little things that we can do every single day that are going to make the most impact.
Right. And and there was times in my life as a young technician where there were external factors outside of the professional world that were dragging me down. And it was like you said, it was the technician next to me. It was one of the parts guys. It was someone that was like, "Hey, you look a little down today. What's going on?" You know what I mean? And I may not even got that from some of the people that I considered friends at the time or even family. But when I was at work, people noticed it. And, I was fortunate that had, a lot of people at the first shop that I worked at, being a young person getting into the industry, that not only encouraged me to, like I said, be the best with the trade. That's the most important. You can be enthusiastic about cars, but I was always told that's not going to carry you through retirement, being enthusiastic about cars. You know what I mean? It's about being the best at what you're doing. And also, too, like I said, they were the ones that were like, "You all right? Something's different today." You know what I mean? Because we spent, when you're flat rate at a dealer, sometimes your day's 5 hours, sometimes your day's 12 hours. So in the summertime, especially, those were basically the only people we saw. You go home, you go to bed, and then you just went and did it again because we were so busy that it was like you had to work those extended hours to get the customers out the door, but also too because you're capitalizing on the money being flat rate. And it was, and then when I moved on to my second shop, it was definitely something that carried on. We socialized together outside of work and even called each other out for our bullshit. You know what I mean? Whether it be at the bar or at the shop, and it could be not even related to work, but there was always that camaraderie of we were checking up on each other. Everyone was there to try to make money, but also to do a good job and have a laugh. You know what I mean? And I have friends of mine that I would have never met if it weren't for working in the shop. And these are people that I keep in contact with, even though we don't work with anymore. And even if I move away from Portland, I would still come back here to visit them. You know what I mean? And,
Mm-hmm.
these are all people that I've met through, you know, working those long hours. Hey, can I borrow your tool? Like, you know, or hey, go buy it yourself now. You borrowed it enough. But, through that banter and just that mutual support, like we're all here still.
That 3 borrow rule is an important thing, right? If you borrow, and I've heard it a couple of different ways, and I like the 3, and the reason being is, you borrow it once, maybe it's a fluke,
Yeah.
right? Maybe it's a fluke. Maybe the person you're borrowing it from, has been at a different dealer where their mix of vehicles is entirely different. Maybe it was even a different brand, so that's why they had the tool.
Mm-hmm.
If you borrow it again, maybe it was pure coincidence, like you had 2 back-to-back, right? 2 back-to-back.
Mm-hmm.
So my stipulation is, if you borrow it 3 times in 1 year, right? If it's 3 times in 1 year, buy the tool for yourself.
Right.
The likelihood that they're going to let you borrow it a 4th time is going to be slim.
Yeah. Yeah.
1. And 2, if you've done it 3 times, the likelihood you're going to do it 6 to 12 times is significantly higher than if you've only done it twice in a year.
Yeah.
Right?
At that point, you should notice the pattern that there's a high failure rate of a certain repair or a component on your vehicles that you're working on, and it's time to invest.
Yes. And you're talking about camaraderie in the shop. We talked about it, and I struggling right now. Just trying to remember, going back a whole bunch of episodes. Talking about how important camaraderie is.
Yeah.
And that not even necessarily a tight bond, but you need to have a baymate. You need to have like I think there's a couple of different ways you can call it: a work wife, work husband. That kind of close knit bond with someone, the person that you can go to on the floor that has experienced the same kind of shit that you experience, who experiences on a day-to-day basis the same kind of shit that you deal with. So you have that commonality of daily to do, so that you can just throw stuff at them, whether it's literally throwing stuff at them to make them laugh, or throw stuff at them. It's like, hey, what do you think? And it doesn't have to be about work, and it doesn't, but it can be about work. But somebody you can trust enough to ask them just about anything. Right. So you got that.
Yeah.
So
and that, like I said, and one of the things that has been a benefit by keeping those bonds alive, even if you move on to a different shop. Like, I can call buddies. I'm at the Independent now, and I could still call up one of my buddies at the local BMW dealer, and I'm like, hey man, like I had one not that long ago. It was I think it was like a 2017 or 2018 BMW M4 convertible, and it came in because the owner was complaining about sloshing noises in the back, and I noticed there was water in the unibody, in the window wells, pretty much all the way up to the top, where the window would roll up to. Like, water was just collecting inside the unibody of this car. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, the window regulators, the motors, everything, all submerged in water. In the quarter panel of this BMW. And so I call up my buddy at the dealer, and this is a guy, like, I started working with this guy when I was 18 years old, and I'll be 38 in 2 months. That's how long we've known each other. And so I call him up, and he's like, "Oh, you got one of those?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what's the deal with
What do you mean one of those? What do you mean one of those?
So there's a Silvers bulletin for it from BMW. So on the M cars, because they get the fancier side skirts and all of your body kit accessories and all that other stuff, the side skirts cover up the drains for the window wells and prevent it actually starts creating a suction because they're sandwiched together and doesn't allow any water to drain out the drains. So it fills the unibody full of water with the extended M side skirts. So what's the
other than the obvious of getting like maybe a straw in there of some kind to relieve the suction to let it drain?
Yeah.
What's the long-term fix?
So what they do is those drains have a centrifuge inside of them that's supposed to like draw the water out, but because of it gets covered up, it actually gives it the reverse effect. So what you do is you loosen the side skirts and you remove the centrifuge from the drain, and it's just a natural, gravity drain at that point. And then the water just started dumping out. I probably removed 20 gallons of water from the unibody of this car.
Wow.
So, the big, I had two big coolant drip pans, I was going to say they probably hold more than 5 gallons, one on each side, just collecting water as this thing just drained. And it was one of the craziest, especially of the newer generation BMW stuff. Water leaks have always been an issue with BMW, especially here in the Northwest. But that one was one of the toppers for me as far as seeing the damage that water does to some of these European vehicles. I don't know what it is about the tissue paper vapor barriers that they put on over there in Germany, but they think they underestimate the amount of water we get here in the Northwest.
And that is the same kind of way here in Canada. Sometimes the torrential downpour is fucking egomaniacal. It's absolutely villainous. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's a great story to end on. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
20 gallons of water in your body.
Yeah, and like I said, if you don't keep in contact with all these people that you've worked with, whether you're at the same shop or not, or even if you're at competitors, that's another thing. It's another tool I guess you could say, in your toolbox, is having your buddies with, a different perspective or some experience that you might not have. You know what I mean?
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. Sometimes, burning the ships is a good idea. Sometimes burning the bridges might be a way to save your own anxiety and stress, but some bridges, be careful, because those bridges might be 100%. More valuable to ease two-way communication. Because those bridges, sometimes you can leave a shop and unfortunately you burn the bridge of the folks that work there too, that you'd like to keep in contact with, not necessarily management. So, well, Loren, this has been awesome. I appreciate you. I thank you for sharing some of those stories. Thank you for teaching the folks what some of the different chassis are. I know I'm starting to forget them because it's been a hot minute, but brings back memories. I remember, talking about, huddling around and 124 and 203 and 212, and I was working on this. It's like, what? Can you guys? That's a G-Wagon and that's an E-Class. Can you tell me what you're talking about? So I appreciate that very much, and thank you for giving us your time and your stories and your advice. And hopefully somewhere someone gets a tidbit out there, especially your decompression, your piece of advice. Somebody uses that to their advantage. Oh no! That's the end of another episode, wrenches. But that's okay, because there's going to be another one coming next week. And for those of you watching, thank you very much for watching the very first episode of the One-to-One Wrench Turners podcast being put onto YouTube. And if you happen to be one of those folks who have listened to this episode on Spotify or your streaming audio service of choice, don't forget to check out YouTube for many, many episodes now on video sitting there. Thank you very much all for listening. Thank you very much for watching. Loren, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to spend with us, sharing your life stories, your journey through being a mechanic. And as usual, at this time of the episode, a quote. Until next week. Even if something is left undone, everyone must take time to sit still and watch the leaves turn. Elizabeth Lawrence. If you haven't already, folks, please subscribe to the Wrench Turners podcast on your streaming service of choice, whether it be YouTube or Rumble or any one of the audio streaming service platforms. It really helps us grow and get in front of as many technicians as we possibly can to spread the betterment of our lives, their well-being, and their productivity. Remember, folks, negativity pushes, positive pulls, and always clean your toys before you put them away.